To summarize, quite unhealthy. Pretty unhealthy. That's when I first started to think about boundaries for myself. Because when I went back to work 4 months later, I was like, I'm going to take my lunchtime walk. And I don't care if you expect me to work, because I used to work through my lunch a lot. Yeah, I think I just threw myself into it. And I thought, okay, I'm just going to listen to exactly what they tell me. I'm just going to do exactly what they tell me to do. And then week after week, I saw changes. And I was like, oh, wow, it works.
Welcome to Real People, Real Results, Real Change, the podcast that's dedicated to helping real people develop real health and fitness in their lives. Real people like you, business owners, professionals, house husbands and housewives, and students. I'm Stefan, I'm a personal wellness coach at YouFit Studio, and I'll be your host. This episode, I'm talking with Sonal Bhuptani, a senior project manager and business graduate. Sonal loves cooking and baking in her spare time and has a real passion for food. In this episode, we talk about how Sonal has used fitness and a related mindset to significantly grow her personal and professional confidence since lockdown in 2020. Okay, Sonal, I'm absolutely delighted you're joining me today.
Thank you.
And I guess what I wanted to talk to you about and discover more about was, in the first instance at least, was like your journey towards greater confidence in your life, and I guess the role that health and fitness has played in that, amongst other things. But I don't know. Do you want to kind of give us a baseline, like kind of talk about like where you were when you started?
Yeah.
And what that was like.
Yeah. So before I started, I was overweight.
Okay.
And I was very unfit. I remember I would get out of breath very easily. I remember that I went on holiday with my mum to Barcelona, and we went to Park Güell. I don't know if you've ever been.
No.
But you have to climb this hill. Okay. And I was struggling, and my mum, who's 25 years older, sprinted up this hill, and it was so embarrassing because obviously I was struggling, I was out of breath, and I was like, oh my God, this is awful.
Wow.
I was a workaholic. I used to dedicate all of my time, all of my energy to work.
Okay.
Even if I had a day off, I would end up working. So I'd never really get time to reset. My nutrition was really bad. Like I used to eat mostly beige food. I rarely ate, definitely never ate protein, not really a lot of vegetables. Wasn't a very varied diet.
Yeah. And so how did you feel day to day? Like what was that like?
Just lacking in energy. And yeah, I wasn't really planning for the future. I was just living from one day to the, trying to get that day done and then on to the next one.
Okay.
My mental health, I struggled with anxiety. I still do on occasion, but nowhere near as bad. And I used to suffer from panic attacks, which were awful. If anyone's ever had them, it's like having a heart attack. You feel like you're having a heart attack. And I would suffer from them quite regularly, like probably once every 2 months or so.
Goodness, yeah.
My relationship, I used to date these guys that treated me so badly, and I allowed it. It's just baffling to me now.
Yeah.
To summarize, quite unhealthy. Pretty unhealthy.
So, okay, and so there must have been a turning point at some point.
Yeah.
That sort of tipped you onto this different road. Was it a realization? Did something happen, or was it a gradual process?
So for me, I think it was lockdown because up until that point, I'd always worked, and before that, I'd worked in a corporate job. I used to work for Samsung in London, which was really intense because obviously it's like a Korean work culture where you were, it was expected of you to work above and beyond the hours that you did.
Yeah.
And so when lockdown happened, I was forced to stop, because it was literally illegal for me to work.
Okay.
Yeah. So and I never had that, and I was like, wow. At first, I was like, what am I going to do? But then, I fully embraced that time that I had, and I was able to just focus on what I want and my needs. And for the first time ever, And I feel like lockdown really was the making of me now.
That's so interesting, isn't it?
Because whereas some people struggled,
Yeah.
I thrived in lockdown.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so you were working out from home still, or,
No,
or you weren't allowed to
I was
work?
furloughed, so it was literally,
okay.
I was not allowed to even log on to my emails. It was
Gotcha.
illegal for me to work.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what did that look like? What sort of things did you?
So
start
suddenly
to
I
do?
had all this time that I could dedicate up for me because you couldn't go out, you couldn't see people. So I started going on walks for the first time in my life.
Okay.
And prior to that, I literally used to do about 2,000 steps a day, and that was at a push.
Okay.
So I started to go on long walks. I started to, I think I rediscovered my love for cooking, which I never really used to do before. And then I was able to focus on really on just what I wanted. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And then I guess there was another transition coming out of lockdown. Is that right? Or, so what were you? So you were walking.
Yeah.
Or were you exploring sort of other aspects of
Yeah.
fitness at that point? As well?
Yeah. I think I started listening to a lot of podcasts. I started to get into like the mental health aspect of it, and that was actually that summer was the first time I spoke with Sam at UFit.
Okay.
Although I didn't join at that point because I was still on furlough and my financial circumstances, it was a bit uncertain for me to commit to something like that at that point. Although I did, obviously 6 months later, then I joined in the winter lockdown when I started work again.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So you had that in mind already.
I did.
From the things you were listening to.
Yeah.
And stuff that you were going to explore some element of personal fitness.
Yeah, I think it was just a real like perspective shift for me in the sense that the world does not revolve around work.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think it just gave me that shift in my mindset to think that the world keeps moving even if you aren't working, which I never realised before.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. And so more of a sense of like looking after yourself.
Yeah,
and
and to think that I matter more than my job.
Yeah. Were there any? So what guided you towards podcasts, or were you just kind of googling?
Because I was going on all these walks, and I was like, okay, this is getting boring now, just me. So I need to like listen to something. That's when I started to get it.
So it sounds like you already knew though you wanted to feel better.
Yeah,
is that right?
definitely. I think at that point I had really burnt out, and I feel like it was just such a blessing to have that time to think that, okay, I don't have deadlines. I don't have to do this or that and commit to this. It's now all about me, and I'm now in a place where I felt really unhealthy. What can I now do about it?
Yeah. Okay. Were there particular podcasts you were drawn to?
I think mostly about. I think about meditation. I listened to quite a lot. Yeah. And that's when I started meditating.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Is that something you still do?
Yeah. But now I do it every morning without fail.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's become part of my routine.
Okay. Amazing. All righty. So what started to happen then in terms of what did that look like and feel like in terms of sort of the growth of your confidence, and were there any other factors?
Yeah. So I think it started to show up in the sense that that's when I first started to think about boundaries for myself. Because when I went back to work 4 months later, I was like, I'm going to take my lunchtime walk. And I don't care if you expect me to work, because I used to work through my lunch a lot.
Okay.
Pretty much 4 days a week, I think I would work through my lunch. So that showed up in the sense that I was now like, no, I'm going to take this hour for my lunch and I'm going to go for my walk, and that's a non-negotiable.
Wow, yeah. So you realised the importance that had for you.
Yeah, and just how refreshed I was afterwards, and how just it helped my mindset.
Okay. And then so you started to introduce, was it fitness or food first that you started to shift?
Fitness.
Okay.
Yeah, I had no clue about nutrition at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what happened? So what was that like then? So you're joining a gym.
Yeah.
Got a coach. Develop a training program.
So,
lots of new stuff.
Yeah. Well, I actually started on a challenge.
Okay.
It was called a drop 2 sizes challenge. which I thought, no way would I ever drop 2 sizes. I just thought that was just unbelievable. I'll try it, but I'm not going to, I'll just, maybe a few pounds will come off. So yeah, I started on this challenge, and it was it was just so outside of my comfort zone to start with, because it was very strict in the sense that you had to do 12,000 steps a day.
Okay.
At that point, I was still only doing 6,000 steps a day, and I thought, how am I going to factor this into my daily routine?
Yeah.
Where am I going to find the time?
Yeah.
And it was also, you had to hit these food groups as well. And I didn't have any clue about nutrition, really, at that point. So yeah, I felt really outside my comfort zone. And at first I was like, what have I signed up to? How am I going to make this work in my life? But yeah, that's when that was when the biggest shift happened.
Okay, so very skeptical.
Yeah.
Wondering whether you can like, get out of it.
Thinking I'd made a massive mistake.
But you
Yeah.
embraced it, I guess. at some
Yeah.
point. And then,
Yeah, I think I just threw myself into it, and I thought, okay, I'm just going to listen to exactly what they tell me. I'm just going to do exactly what they tell me to do, and then week after week, I saw changes, and I was like, oh wow, it works.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're willing to do what was needed to do.
Yeah.
And that was adjustments. So you said like food groups. So that was
Yeah.
looking at like your protein.
Yes,
and
so
things?
trying to hit like 3 portions of protein a day, which I didn't really eat a lot of. I ate meat, but not really a lot of protein a day. And like I said, it was mostly beige food.
Yeah.
Lots of very carb heavy. My diet was,
Okay.
and very sugary as well.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah.
And eating vegetables as well. So obviously I had to hit 3 portions of veg. That was the challenge.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's not you weren't a fan of vegetables at that point, or you just hadn't explored?
No, I hadn't explored because I was always trying to do the quickest fix. So, for example, at lunchtime at work, I would go to the Cobb van or something that was readily available.
Yeah. Okay, so no prepping.
I never prepped, never.
Yeah. Did you cook?
Rarely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So you're having to introduce all those different habits.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. And so what sort of things were you eating to start with? Can you remember?
Yeah, just a lot of sandwiches, a lot of very bread-based, I think. And then obviously Indian food is can be very carb-heavy as well. Pasta, yeah.
Yeah. And then when you started to adjust your food,
Yeah.
what sort of things then did you move on to then? What?
So, yeah, I started using a lot of recipes that the gym provided, and that was a lot of it was all based around veg, and that was your base plate, and then you would build on that. So,
Okay.
so yeah.
Okay. Were there any standout meals? Like do you, and now are there particular ones that you kind of go to, any particular things, or is it?
No,
what's it
I try new things every single week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Except for breakfast, which I tend to stick to the 2 or 3 things. Like I rotate. Yeah.
Okay. All right, cool. So then, like I've talked to other people, especially women, right, about that it's quite intimidating, sort of starting to, because you're doing an element of training with weights, free weights, right?
Yeah.
So how did you find that, and how did?
Yeah, I did find it daunting at the beginning. I used to prefer the group classes because you can just follow what you're being told to do. So yeah, I found it quite intimidating to use the weights at first, and especially doing strengths on my own, I found really daunting. And now it's my favourite thing to do.
Okay, so cool. And so in terms of your confidence then,
Yeah.
what were the sort of things, so you're changing your, the way you moved,
Yeah,
the way you ate,
yeah,
you'd introduced meditation
Yeah.
into your life, and those breaks where you're getting out into the air, you're walking,
Yeah.
but you're also taking that step away from work. How did your confidence develop? Like, what were sort of some of the elements to that? And
yeah. So I think it's because I started to put my needs and wants ahead of other people's, whereas before I was such a people pleaser that whatever I wanted always came last. And when I started to think about what I wanted first, it started to give me the confidence to think that I'm capable to prioritize myself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how did you come to that sort of conclusion? Was that from your coaches? Was it from just starting to take that time and noticing sort of the impact it had?
Yeah, I think it's just because I noticed the benefits of what I was doing, and I thought, I'm just, that has to come first because of how I feel when I've done it.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm guessing, so did that, so because some people might say, right, but that's being really selfish.
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
it's true. And as women as well, we're such givers and such nurturers. And that's such a nice thing, but at what cost? And that cost comes at burnout, like what I experienced, and it comes at being unhealthy, being overweight. So some people might view that as being selfish. However, I feel like it's essential, and I feel like a lot more people should think about themselves first.
Yeah.
But it's unnatural. You do feel like it's unnatural.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you're breaking with what you've been taught, I guess, or just what you've seen.
Yeah.
But do you find you have more energy now?
Yes.
Like, so because I have heard some people say that actually they can, in a sense, give more in a certain sense.
Yeah, and
because
it's
it's
true.
easier. It's just
and like the saying that you can't pour from an empty cup.
Right.
It's so true.
Okay.
Now I feel like I've got so much more energy that I can dedicate that time to my family, my friends. I'm planning ahead, which I never used to do. So I'm planning things to do with people.
right.
Yeah, so I feel like it is better, but you don't realize, and it's like when you're driving, you feel like you never say I don't have time to stop to fill up fuel.
Yeah, right.
But you do.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, and people think I don't have time to meditate, but they don't realize that it's so essential. Like even my busiest days, that's when I need it the most.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so I make sure I make that time,
Yeah.
no matter what.
Yeah. I suppose the other thing is like everyone always remembers to charge their phone.
Yeah, yeah.
Not themselves
Yeah,
necessarily.
it's true. Yeah.
Okay. What kind of meditation do you do? Like, is that around breath work, or is it sort of some kind of observation meditation, or something else?
I actually mix it up every day. So, so one day I'll concentrate on my breath work, and then another day I'll do a guided meditation on like Spotify, and then another day I'll just listen to like really soothing sounds and just get lost in it. Really, yeah. So I mix it up, which I really like.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, you never get bored.
Never get bored.
Cool. All right. And then what's your... for confidence, like, is that something... I mean, you mentioned it's like you feel different.
Yeah.
Do you also notice that in terms of things like changing like your self-talk, for example? Things
Yes.
like that?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So I used to be very negative, and it's like what they say. Talk to yourself how you talk to a really good friend, and I really started doing that. And I thought, no, I'm not gonna speak to myself like that because I feel like my self-confidence increased. So I felt like that was an injustice to speak to myself in that negative type of way.
Right.
So that I changed my self-talk. Which really helps your confidence. And then also, I never used to really plan for like goals. I never used to plan for the future. And now I write down goals because I have the self-confidence that I know I can hit that.
Okay. Yeah. So it feeds into that cycle. But then also, because, I mean, how have things been recently? Like, have you noticed, I mean, if you're setting goals and your confidence is higher, are there things that have changed in your sort of personal, professional life as a result of that, would you say?
Yeah, I feel like I'm putting myself forward for a lot more than I used to shy away from things. So I used to think, I can't do that. And now I actively put myself forward for like big projects at work, because I feel like, no, I could do that. And then even just if the gym asks me to do something, I feel like, yeah, I could do that. So I actively put myself forward for things, whereas I used to shy away from it.
Yeah.
It's like it just snowballs because you do something and then you're like, oh, and that gives you the confidence to do it, like, something bigger.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it snowballs in the best way.
Okay, amazing. So it's quite a big journey in a quite a short space of time. Really,
Yeah,
it sounds
a
of it.
year, really, yeah.
Yeah. So where are you now? Like how do you feel, and how are you kind of like, how are things, you know, kind of panning out for you, and I guess what does the future hold?
So I feel really healthy, I think, yeah, in all aspects, not just physically, mentally as well. My relationships are better with my family, my friends, my loved ones. I feel like that's massively improved because I feel like I'm showing up better in those relationships. But not only that, I also am more confident in expressing my needs and wants. Whereas before I used to be really hesitant to communicate that. Now I express them really clearly, so I feel like I get what I want. And so before I was resentful maybe because I felt like I wasn't really being treated the way that I wanted to, but now I communicate that in all aspects, even at work. So I got a new job earlier this year.
Okay, well done.
So while I was negotiating that, I made sure I communicated exactly what I expected from that employment.
Oh wow.
Whereas before I would have been like, oh no, I can't do that because I really want this job, and if I do that, they might not give it to me. They might choose someone else. That was, it's a bit.
That's a big change, right?
Yeah. So I suppose, in all of my relationships, I feel like it's a lot more balanced.
Yeah, because you mentioned about shifting your boundaries.
Yeah.
Is that sort of part of that, would you say?
Yeah, massively, because I feel like I don't really tolerate any behaviour that is not conducive to me. And also I removed myself from situations that I felt like wasn't serving me. Even now, I feel like I say no a lot, which I love doing now because I feel like if I don't want to go to this social event, then I won't, and I don't care if I say no to it.
Wow. Okay, that sounds really empowering.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Right, I used to just go along with things before because I was, I didn't have the self-confidence to stick up for myself, whereas I do now. I assert myself a lot more.
Okay. So what would you, I mean, a lot of people, and a lot of women especially, right, are in that position where they have been people pleasers, or they are people pleasers, for example, and it's hard to put those boundaries in place and to feel more confident. A lot of people experience anxiety. So, like, I mean, all of those things sound like they built one upon another. But like, if you were sort of advice, sort of giving some initial sort of tips or advice to listeners, like what are some of the sort of the top things that have sort of served you best?
I would say have confidence in what you think, because your body will tell you everything you need to know, and your gut especially. And if you feel like something's not serving you, have the confidence to step away from it. And most of the time you think that, I can't say no to going to this event because people will think badly of me, but actually no one cares.
So
yeah, so just stop thinking about what other people think, because most of the time they're not thinking what you think they're thinking.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Amazing. All right. Well, we're going to talk again. I'm really looking forward to that. And but in the meantime, thank you so much. And just great to hear about that progress that you've made, and how good you're feeling. But also, such good advice.
Oh, thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Sonal.
Thank you.